Yo, what is up guys? It's Cohen back here again today with another video, and today's video I'm going to talk about 5 players who have kind of flown under the radar so far this season. They're all having pretty good seasons, and I felt like giving some guys more attention. This video isn't going to feature anyone who is playing well but has gotten a lot of attention. For example, someone like Jaylen Brown, who's having a fantastic season, one of my favorite players in the NBA to be honest. He's doing absolutely incredible, putting up like almost better numbers than his teammate Jason Tatum, but he has gotten a lot of national media coverage, and so I kind of wanted to focus a little bit off of those players and talk a little more about some guys who haven't gotten that type of media coverage. Another guy, for example, is like a Domantas Sabonis, who's having a great season but is getting some good media coverage. So just wanted to preface that before I go ahead and talk about some guys and you're like, oh, why isn't this guy on here? Why isn't that guy on here? Another thing, I can only put 5 players on this list, so I picked 5 guys. There are more people I could go into and talk about. People like Darius Bazley on my own Thunder. I'm not going to talk about him because I talk about him a lot on Twitter at 3_Cone, and I am sure I'll talk about him again in future videos talking about the Thunder. So I wanted to give him a little bit of a rest. Another guy like Lou Dort also on the Thunder. You could go into like Sadiq Bey on the Pistons, who's having a pretty good rookie season. Tyrese Halliburton on the Kings is having a good season, but like I said, I could only pick 5 people for this list, so I picked 5, and they're not in any order. They're just kind of in the order that I want to talk about them. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Go ahead and leave me someone below who I might have missed for this list, or someone who you think is having an under-the-radar season, and I guess we'll just go ahead and get. The first player on our list is Keldon Johnson, a small forward for the San Antonio Spurs. He's coming into his second season this year after getting a little bit more usage in the bubble than he did in the regular season previously. Prior to that, he performed decently in the bubble and showed a lot of people the potential that some people already knew he had, but showcased it a little bit more in that higher usage role. And coming into the season, he seems to have carried that over and has really performed so far in that role for the Spurs, a team that not a lot of people have very high expectations for this season, which is very weird to say for the San Antonio Spurs because they're a team that always seems to have high expectations. But despite that, though, they're currently 4-4. They're tied for 4th in the West. They have a win over the Lakers and the Clippers. And they've had a very, very tough schedule so far, to be honest, including having played the Lakers 3 times already, 2 of those being losses, the other one, the win I just mentioned last night. But this Spurs team has a lot of talent, despite not being one of the top teams in the West or in the NBA in general. They do have a lot of decent talent. They've got guys like LaMarcus Aldridge, DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray, 3 guys who are probably their 3 key guys at this point, but amongst them is Keldon Johnson, a guy who has probably been like their 4th or 5th best player so far this season. Someone who, in his second season, is averaging 13.9 points per game. We'll round it up to 14 for him. 7.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.3 steals, 2 turnovers, which is a little high. But like I said, he's getting used to a higher usage role, so you can't fault him too much for that at this point. 44.6% from the field, 42.3% from 3. That's on about 3.3 attempts a game, and 85.7% from the line, which is really impressive. Almost near 90% free throw shooting. Almost, if his field goal percentage was up a little bit, he'd be very close to 50-40-90 so far. I know it's a very young season, but that does show that he has capability to be a really efficient scorer in this league. I really feel like Keldon Johnson is one of the more interesting players on the Spurs, especially on a team full of like very young, interesting guys. I already mentioned DeJounte Murray, but they also have guys like Lonnie Walker, Derek White, Devin Vassell, and Keldon Johnson, as we're discussing here. And out of those guys, excluding DeJounte Murray, I think Keldon Johnson's probably at this point the most interesting of all those young wings. I think he's got high potential, like I said, as a scorer. He grabs a lot of rebounds. He even has shown a little bit of playmaking and a little bit of two-way potential there. So I think that this Spurs team, as they head into the future, starting right now, I think Keldon Johnson is going to be a big team, or big piece for this team, starting right now. And the second player on our list is Cameron Johnson, or Cam Johnson of the Phoenix Suns. A team which is currently 6-2, which I'm very happy to see as someone who likes the Suns a lot, and that's good for first place in the Western Conference, which is kind of crazy because up to this point, their stars, Devin Booker and Chris Paul, really haven't played fantastically so far, especially Devin Booker. He's struggled with a lot of turnover issues. He's not scoring the ball as much. And part of the reason they've still been able to find success despite that is some guys, such as Cam Johnson, have really been stepping up for that team. Cam Johnson, in particular, is averaging 13.1 points per game, 2.3 rebounds, 1 assist, 0.8 steals, about half a turnover a game, which is decent. That's not too bad, especially since he doesn't handle the ball that much. But he's shooting 50.7% from the field and 42% from 3 on 6.3 attempts. Keldon Johnson, like we just discussed, was shooting pretty well from 3, but 6.3 attempts to shoot 42% is kind of ridiculous. Cam Johnson gets a lot of wide open looks because there is a lot of pressure from guys like Devin Booker and Chris Paul, something that Cam Johnson definitely benefits from as someone who just kind of chills on the three-point arc a lot of the time. But he's definitely made the most out of those opportunities, and so far he's been the perfect stretch four for that team that really thrives off of the playmaking ability of Chris Paul and Devin Booker to find those guys wide open on the perimeter. Cam Johnson really is just a perfect fit on this team, and a lot of people, me included, to be honest, gave the Suns a little bit too much crap for drafting Cam Johnson. It felt like kind of a weird pick at that point, but it's seeming to work out for them, and I'm really happy it is, because like I said previously, the Suns have two of my favorite players in the NBA, in Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and as they continue to get back into form, it may not only help them and help the team in general, but it may help Cam Johnson too, someone who, as those players get better scoring opportunities and start to raise in their offensive outputs and turn over the ball less, Cam Johnson's definitely going to get more open looks, and he could honestly be someone who could, if he stays on this trajectory, average almost 15 points per game in just one of his very early seasons in the NBA. Third on our list is a player who played for one of my favorite college basketball team, UVA, as you can tell by this back here. Small forward for the Hawks, DeAndre Hunter. Hunter kind of gets forgotten about on that Hawks team, I feel like sometimes, on a team which just made a bunch of offseason acquisitions. Bogdan Bogdanovic, you've got Danilo Gallinari, Rondo, Chris Dunn, a bunch of guys who came in and were expected to be producers for that team. However, a few of them, like Gallinari, have kind of faced some injury so far. Chris Dunn hasn't played at all, and so some of those forgotten guys, like a DeAndre Hunter, have had to step up and show that production that the Hawks need to live up to the expectations they've kind of set for themselves this season. And thankfully for them, DeAndre Hunter has really stepped up. Someone who I feel like also sometimes gets kind of in Cam Reddish's shadow. Cam Reddish has a lot of potential, but I think people forget that DeAndre Hunter was a top 5 pick for a reason. A really, really good player, solid two-way player. He, on this season, is averaging 16 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, 2.4 assists, about half a steal a game, 1 turnover. He's shooting 51.1% from the field, which is pretty damn good, considering he's not someone who is very much considered as like an offensive threat. He's also shooting 42.9% from 3 on 5.3 attempts a game. Something that he definitely needs to keep doing to be a really productive player in this league, because he was drafted as kind of an ideal 3-and-D wing on a team that struggled with defense. You have Trae Young in the point guard spot, someone who isn't a very good defender. John Collins, who can kind of block shots but isn't also a great defender, at least at the time of DeAndre Hunter being drafted. Now you've got a guy like DeAndre Hunter who is playing that two-way position. He's started a lot of games for them. He's someone who can really sometimes he just has to knock down that clutch three-point shot, especially when you have someone like Trae Young who demands just so much attention as a really unbelievable source of gravity, someone who can hit from anywhere on the court. He's going to attract those double teams, or on drives he's going to attract pressure coming from the perimeter, trying to crash and help prevent him from getting a wide open look at the rim. Trae Young's going to easily find DeAndre Hunter chilling out on the perimeter. He's going to knock down that three-point shot, and that's something huge for this Hawks team. And like I said, the defense, this Hawks team is a team that struggles with defense sometimes, but DeAndre Hunter is able to get a bunch of stops, and he's been a really bright spot for this Hawks team so far that has kind of fluctuated. They started really hot and have kind of cooled off a little bit now, but I do think that this Hawks team is going to continue to be fun to watch, and DeAndre Hunter is going to be a big part of if they make that push that they're trying to make this season. Fourth on our list is another guy who kind of gets forgotten about on his team. He plays for the Indiana Pacers, a team that is 6-2 right now, tied for the second seed in the East with the Boston Celtics, and that is Malcolm Brogdon. I've heard the Pacers talked about a little bit, but it's more so Domantas Sabonis, who, to be fair, has been incredible this season. He's been really good. Probably top 10 MVP candidate, definitely at this point. Miles Turner's also gotten a bit of hype because he's been incredible at blocking shots, averaging like 4 blocks a game so far this season. I tweeted about that yesterday. It's nuts. But I feel like Brogdon is kind of the forgotten factor on that team. He is averaging 23.6 points per game, which leads his team. He's averaging 4.1 rebounds, 7 assists, which is a lot, and is his career high, also leading his team. 2 steals, also leading his team. Only 1.6 turnovers, which is pretty good for someone who handles the ball as much as he does, and for someone who's averaging 7 assists a game. Additionally, Malcolm Brogdon is a player that we kind of know for being efficient, but like his shooting splits right now are unbelievable. Shooting 51.8% from the field, 47.2% from 3 on 6.6 threes a game, which is absolutely ridiculous, and 87% from the free throw line. He's always been known to be one of the better free throw shooters in the league, but this has been a great season so far from Malcolm Brogdon. A player, like I keep saying, it feels like he gets forgotten, and I will always feel like the Bucks made a mistake letting Malcolm Brogdon go, but that ended up being to the Pacers' good fortune because Brogdon has been a huge part of that team, especially since Victor Oladipo went down with injury, and he just hasn't really looked like that all-star Oladipo that we saw a few seasons ago. Malcolm Brogdon has looked the part of an all-star this season, though, and if he's able to hold this up, he could be a most improved player candidate. I don't think he'd win it just because there are so many good candidates this season, but averaging 24 points per game, 7 assists, 2 steals, these incredible shooting splits. If the Pacers are by the all-star break timeline are still really, really good, Brogdon might be an all-star this season, which would be great for me to see. Once again, a former UVA player, someone that came out of the second round, and Malcolm Brogdon is just one of my favorite stories in the NBA season. So when people are talking about the Pacers, make sure they don't forget him. The final player I want to talk about today is someone who just got an absolute bag this offseason. He plays for the Detroit Pistons, who up to this point have not been very good. They're 1-7, with their only win coming actually against the Celtics, weirdly enough. But this player has been a pretty big bright spot for them up to this point, and that is Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant is having, in my opinion, the leading most improved player candidacy season this year. He has been incredible. He's almost doubled his point per game output, averaging 24 points per game from just around 13-ish. Averaging 6 rebounds a game, 1.6 assists, just under a steal, 1.3 blocks, 1.3 turnovers, about a 44.4 field goal percentage, shooting about 34.4% from 3. That's about on 7.6 threes a game too, which is a lot of threes. I don't know if he should be taking that many, but I mean, shooting almost 35% on that many threes really isn't that bad. He's also shooting 90% from the free throw line, which is an indicator that he does have pretty good shot mechanics, and he could theoretically get those percentages up a little bit. Like I said, the Pistons haven't been very good this season, but I feel like I haven't heard enough talk about Jeremy Grant as someone who's averaging 24 points per game, like I said. A lot of people said that this contract was bad, and I'll admit I was someone who thought that this was an overpay. It still might be because the Pistons are still pretty bad despite him playing this well, but he does deserve a shout out and some props for just how well he is playing. The Pistons have struggled through some injuries. Different guys, I can't even really name them all, have all had injuries this season. Unfortunately, Killian Hayes even just went out with an injury that could keep him out anywhere from a few weeks to the entire season, depending on if he needs surgery at some point. So prayers out to him. But Jeremy Grant, like I said, has been the bright spot, in my opinion, for the Detroit Pistons. He is someone who is trying to prove himself to the league. He took a gamble on himself, saying, I want to be one of the number one options, leaving a much better situation in Denver, a place where he just got to a few games away from the NBA Finals, losing in 5 to the Lakers, someone who was heralded a lot in the bubble as kind of a defensive stopper and a guy who was really key to that Nuggets deep playoff run. But he decided to bet on himself, go get a bag, and try and be that first option. And kudos to him because, in my opinion right now, he is the most improved player and has shown that when given the opportunity, he can absolutely produce the way that. And that's everyone for the video. Once again, tell me what you think about the players that I mentioned. Tell me if there are any other guys that you think I should talk about in future videos. I kind of want to do stuff like this because I really like talking about under the radar guys, trying to give attention to those teams and those players that might not get as much attention from like big national media outlets, because I think I've said this before, but I watch pretty much every NBA game, if not the entire game, then a lot of it, because I really just do love basketball that much, and being able to talk about it with you guys, it makes it a lot easier for me, and it makes my information a lot more accurate if I do watch every game. So let me know which teams you want me to talk about, which players, what other guys are having kind of under the radar seasons, maybe for your team, that you might want to see me talk about in a video, or that really in just general I should keep an eye out for, because there might even be some players that I don't really know are having great seasons that are having great seasons. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Go ahead, leave a like, subscribe if you like this type of content, share it with people, whatever you want to do. And with that, I'll see you guys later. Real one, say it back.